I am pleased to introduce our speaker this evening. Our speaker is Jordan Clasen. Jordan began to work with produce at the age of 14 at a local grocery store. Before taking the leap to full-time farmer, Jordan spent 5 years managing the produce department at Gateway Market and Cafe, a specialty grocery store in Des Moines. With a strong focus on local and organic produce, he was able to work with some of Iowa's finest producers. He developed an interest in growing garlic, and that led him to want to grow all kinds of fruits and vegetables. He loves being able to farm and call it a career. When he isn't farming, which anyone knows is not too often, he enjoys mushroom hunting with his kids and dyeing with indigo. So we are very excited to have Jordan here with us this evening. I'm going to let him take over, and then I will see you all at the end of the presentation.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, everybody. Like she said, my name is Jordan Clasen, and I've been growing garlic, great garlic, hopefully, since 2009, which is almost hard to believe. This will be our 16th, I think, growing season. We have been full time since 2012, so garlic has been kind of the backbone of what we do. And now I would say it still is the backbone, but we have a lot of other pieces to the pie that make our business work. So I'm going to kind of give you a full year-round look into how we grow garlic. This is not the only way to grow garlic. And in fact, if you want to just bust the bulb, stick it in the ground, garlic is pretty tough. But I've learned a few tricks and tips along the way. So that's kind of what I'm going to share with you all today. If you look at the picture on the left side of the screen, that's how the farm we just purchased. This will be our 5th growing season, but my wife and I bought this farm back in 2020. And it was nothing but just kind of row crops and kind of depleted Iowa soils. And if you look on the right side, that's kind of what it looks like today. We have done a lot of work. There was no road, no utilities, no building on the farm. So we've done a lot of work in infrastructure, but we've also done a lot of work in soil health. So that's kind of what I'm going to try to push you guys to do this season is focus on your soil health, and the rest of the stuff kind of falls into place. Next. And as you see, it all starts with the soil. So I'm going to give you May through October, kind of what the season's looking like ahead of planting season. So go ahead. Now, we've been certified organic for 13 years, but I dropped that certification just a few years ago, and we now consider ourselves regenerative. And regenerative has 6 kind of key principles, but a big one is keeping roots in the ground at all time via cover crops and animal integration. And to us, that's kind of fundamental in building soil fertility. So what you're looking at here, and our little flirt has grown. We now have almost 10 cows, and we'll have, anywhere from 8 to 10 sheep as well. And we kind of graze them together. But what you're looking at is a cover crop. And this is where garlic is going to go this fall. But we like to kind of grow a cover crop, and a cover crop is just something that grows that's not weeds. This specific one is kind of a diverse one. There's what you're mainly looking at is sorghum Sudan. Oh, there's buckwheat, there's soybeans, there's some squash, there's tillage radish. It's just kind of an array of different roots and structures that build soil ahead of the garlic crop. So we like to graze it with the cattle and sheep, and then we like to put our chickens on it. And this is all ahead of garlic in preparation. Next one. And I don't know if you can turn this live. So this is me mowing the cover crop. And if you can't make it go, no big deal. But this cover crop was nearly 5 or 6 foot tall. And we mow it and kind of incorporate it just to get that green manure into the ground. Next slide. So after we mow it, we like to bring the chickens on. Chickens are a great natural source of nitrogen, amongst other things. And they love scratching, working that cover crop into the ground, looking for bugs, looking for insects, and of course, dropping their manure. Next one. Okay, so that's kind of what it looks like post chickens, and then we run the disc through it, one time just to kind of incorporate it. This might be in September, and you can kind of see all that green organic matter into the soil, which as it breaks down, kind of feeds soil microbes and it feeds the garlic crop. Next. Okay. This is what everybody waits for. This is it's kind of a funny time because as everybody's putting their garden to bed, we're still planting. This is kind of our last big hoorah. Um, it's I can't really relax until my garlic's in the ground. So I tell people if you could pick one day out of the year to plant your garlic, I would plant it on Halloween. And a lot of you might say, wow, that's quite late. But really, all garlic needs to do is set its roots down, about 4 weeks before the ground's frozen solid. And this year, right after Thanksgiving, we had a foot of snow on the ground. So um, the idea is you do not want too much top growth. You don't want that garlic to sprout and have a little green sprout too much going into winter. You really just want to focus on root growth. So I'll kind of go ahead and show you what we do in preparation for planting. So straight ahead are the garlic bulbs, and we grow probably too many varieties, but we're growing about 6 to 8 varieties this season. I used to grow upwards of 20. It just logistically kind of got a little tricky to keep them all separated. And I take a lot of pride in, keeping everything separated real nice. So I often do this in a nice warm spot. You can do it in your garage or in your living room, just throw it on a blanket. But this is kind of a relaxing job after a busy season. We just kind of sit there and we pop the cloves. So as you can see, I've got the 2 green tubs there. I like to separate cloves as I'm breaking them up. This is something you don't need to do, but if I have tiny little cloves, I might throw them on the right side. If I have big cloves, I'll throw them on the left side. Why do we do this? In theory, a tiny clove will make a smaller head. And we've got quite the market for green garlic, which is, it's like garlic pulled early, like a green onion. So all of those small ones, we pack together real close. I mean, almost 2-3 inches apart, knowing that we're going to pull them later or earlier in the season. The garlic that are larger cloves, we give a lot more space, and that ensures that, most of our garlic that we're planting a lot of space is going to be nice sized garlic. So, kind of an important note, I don't like to do this any more than 2 to 3 days max before I'm planting. A lot of people, might want to get bored and start breaking them up, but the garlic, they call it the basal plate. It's kind of where the roots shoot out. That can kind of dry out once cracked. So I do tell people, bust it up, right before you're ready to plant. Next slide. So you see all the pretty cloves there, and we put them in these little 20-pound, they're like an onion sack, they're kind of a mesh bag like that, because we do a soaking kind of step next, which I'll kind of touch on if you want to go to the next slide. Again, garlic is super, super hardy, and this is not something you need to do. But this was advice given to me by a good friend who ran Fillery Farm. It's like the world's largest seed bank out in Washington State, and their quality is top notch. And this is kind of just what he told me to do years ago, and I've kind of done it ever since. But we soak overnight in a seaweed solution. And what that does, like you'd soak or prime any seed that you want to kind of swell and sprout, garlic is no different. So I like to soak it in a solution overnight to just give it a little fertility boost before it goes into the ground. So what this looks like, we just fill up big tanks, pour in our seaweed, and put those big bags in there overnight, set it and forget it. And then the next day, pull those bags out, and we do a 7-minute soak in this oxidate. And this is all certified organic stuff, everything we use. So don't think it's like a harsh chemical, but all oxidate is, it's like hydrogen peroxide on steroids. It might kill any like fungal pathogens or any bacteria that might be on that clove for whatever reason. It kind of just sterilizes that clove. So we do 7 minutes in oxidate, 7 minutes incinerate, which is like 100% pure cinnamon oil. Um, and the cinerate is a miticide. So garlic is known, if you don't rotate or if you don't clean your storage facility out, you might get a small little mite that lives on the clove. Not really detrimental to the crop. It's just it can break the head down faster than you want. So what cinerate does is kill those mites and kind of gets you to a neutral clove before planting. If you research this online, there's a lot of different soaking methods that people do, like a diluted vodka solution. I see some people do like a hot water soak. The idea is you just kind of want to sterilize that clove before planting. Next clove. So this again, I kind of tend to go above and beyond, but once the clove is sterile, I like to inoculate it with some beneficial microbes or bacteria. And BioCoat Gold is from a company. They're kind of the cutting edge of regenerative products, but it is like a mycorrhizal inoculant. And what the mycorrhizae does is, and I need to learn a lot still, but the mycorrhizae pretty much communicates with the roots to the soil. So it might go out there and say, hey, I need more manganese, find me manganese. And so you want to kind of create that mycorrhizal communication, and why not inoculate it with BioCoat Gold? This bag costs, I don't know, $50, and it'll do my whole crop, 40, 50,000 plants. So you can buy these in a smaller size. It's everything I do is not really a huge expense, and it doesn't take too much more time. And on the right, we make vermicompost. I just keep it in my basement all year long. We just kind of feed our kitchen scraps, and we toss the vermicompost with the cloves too. So if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see, I don't know if you can make that live, but all I'm doing is, if you were breading barbecue chicken, this is kind of what I say it looks like. You just kind of are tossing that stuff on there and working it. And if you click the next slide, it might kind of show you what it looks like. Okay, so there's your barbecue chicken or your garlic cloves. And why do I do this? Again, it might be overkill, but if you go back a few slides and you can see my sterile cloves, I kind of sterilize those. I don't like it. To me, it's almost too clean. I don't want to plant that in the soil and microbes or anybody be like, wow, gosh, what's this clean clove? So I kind of like to get that beneficial stuff on it as my last, you can go forward a couple times now, as my last means, that is like pure microbe food on there. And I'm just trying to, create that communication between the clove and the living roots and the garlic. Again, do you need to do any of this? No. If you want to just break them up, stick them in the ground, your garlic's going to grow. And that's what I did, probably till about 2016, and we grew great garlic. So these are just steps that I find give us an even better crop. And I just feel like it can't hurt. So once everything is in the sauce and, we've disked, we run our tiller, and you can kind of see the tire track there, and then you see kind of some holes poked in there. So, and then on the far right side, you see I kind of just sprinkle the garlic cloves down the bed, and then I just kind of sit on my knees and poke, and kind of work my way down the bed. I can do Oh, like I can plant about 300 feet. I'm getting old now, but I can plant about 300 feet in just over an hour. So these beds were 300 foot long, or a football field. Um, and I can plant it in about an hour. I haven't timed myself recently, but that's a nice picture. Yeah, ahead of when we were building the barn. And as you see here, same thing. So we shoot for 8 to 10 inches apart in row. So, down the line, and then about a foot apart in between rows. Um, this is probably overkill for the home gardener. I like to tell people that garlic can kind of compete with other stuff. Um, you can kind of pack it in a little tighter than that, but I would still go no closer than 5 or 6 inches. One thing garlic enjoys is sunshine. So, when you're looking at, picking a site for garlic, try to find your sunniest spot in the garden. Um, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be in the garden. I've seen a lot of people, they'll stick cloves, and we did a few this year up by the house, in the house landscaping amongst the flowers and stuff. Don't think that you can get creative with your planting. Don't think it has to go smack dab in the middle of your garden. I've seen a lot of people that will border their garden in garlic, because it's a crop that's out fairly quick. Come July, it's going to be out of the ground, and then it kind of leaves room for the rest of the garden once it turns into a jungle. Um, People do believe that garlic deters deer and rabbits, so that might be another reason to surround the garden with garlic. So don't feel like you have to give them all the space in the world like we do. We are blessed with a lot of space, so I have found the more space I give them, the larger heads I get. Um, and you may ask, why do I want big heads? Well, big heads are what we save every year for seed. And the idea is the bigger the clove, the bigger the head next year. So every year I'm trying to get the biggest heads, and that's what I'm looking to sell and save myself. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're doing more and more no-till on the farm. Somebody told me once that the soil, you can think of it like an apartment building. It might be 20 stories high and has all the rooms, but every time you till, it's like a tornado's going through and knocking over your apartment. And yes, earthworms can rebuild, and yes, humans can rebuild that, but it takes a lot of work to rebuild that to the way, you had your living room set up and your sofa in there. It takes a lot of time to get your space set up. So I like to think of the soil that same way. We are trying really, really hard to stop using the tiller so much, and try to keep, all those little pockets, those roots that are going real deep. Just really try to keep that soil structure in place. So this is an example of some no-till fields that we have a living cover crop in. We just used our same little push seeder that we're seeding anything else, and we seeded a diverse cover crop. Why I'm showing you this, let's say your tomatoes come out in September, you might sneak a little cover crop in and get it looking like this, and then you can go to the next slide. So what I did here, just as an experiment, this is like oats and peas. I think I see some forage collard in there. This is kind of like a winter killed cover crop. So this is a cover crop I'll plant late fall. It grows, stays green, builds soil, and then it dies, leaving me with a nice little mulch. But as you can see right in the middle there, I troweled in the garlic and just poked it in. And then I pretty much gave myself like a natural mulch. As that oats die, it kind of creates a nice little mulch for the garlic going into the winter months. So this is just kind of an example to show you that you can kind of think outside the box when it comes to soil health. I always like to try to get a cover crop in once a year. And this is a good way to kind of throw it on your plot once everything's out, and it builds soil all winter long. And then you can also sneak in a crop like garlic. So next slide. Okay. but I don't want to be too dogmatic. This field we absolutely had to till, but when we're planting, 40,000, it uh, troweling them in is not realistic either. So we're trying to, find that balance of building soil. That's why we like to kind of get that cover crop out ahead of time, um, and also efficiency. So once the crop is in, as you can see, all these beds are planted. We mulch, and we mulch because garlic, this time of year or as spring comes, can do something called what's called heaving. And heaving means when you have wet soil and it freezes and then it thaws and it freezes and thaws, it kind of works that clove out of the ground. And if that clove pushes all the way out of the ground and then it freezes hard, it can kill your crop. So the straw acts as kind of a blanket over the winter months. And it keeps moisture in, it keeps your soil covered, and it kind of creates a more even soil throughout the winter, especially a winter like this where, like I said, after Thanksgiving we had snow, and then up till Christmas it was 50 degrees, and then now we're back to a plunge. So I like to kind of keep that soil covered and consistent going into the winter. And this is kind of how we do it. So about every 10 or 15 feet, we'll lay a square bale out and cut them all open. And then if you go to the next slide, we have the flakes kind of touching, yeah, like those flakes of straw touching all the way down the bed. And that's kind of what I use as a gauge for how thick I need my straw. I go for a good 3, 4, 5 inches of straw going into the winter, because it does kind of settle and pack down once it gets some snow or rain on it. So that's about perfect. So once we flake it like that, then we go back and we kind of fluff it. I did try an experiment. I don't know if I did it this year, where I ran over it with my flail mower. That worked amazing. It was incredibly fast, but it almost made that straw too fine, and I kind of lost some of my weed control. Weed control is another big reason why we use straw mulch. It helps keep the weeds kind of at bay. The garlic's the first thing that comes out of the ground, and the straw kind of helps keep the weeds out. Next slide. Okay. So that last slide is like when I can really relax at the end of the year. That might be not till November or December that I get the whole crop mulched. But my season's not over until I'm looking at fluff straw out there. So this year I kind of had a fire under my butt, and I got done right before Thanksgiving. And then like the next day we got that cold snap and snow. So it was a great pat on the back to see that snow, and I just knew I could relax. So then from, November, December till March, you can kind of just hang out and look at seed catalogs, plan the garden. But come March, it's time to watch that garlic grow. Next slide. Okay, so this is fairly early in the year. You can see the green pastures kind of greening up and a little bit blurry, but if you look down the rows, you can see, you can kind of mark those 3 rows. The garlic is merged. So this varies, but I think the earliest it's ever came up was back in 2012. It was like late February. We just had a crazy warm winter and the garlic came up, but that's not ideal. Really, I mean, mid to late March is when you want to see it. The stakes there you can kind of see at the head of the bed. I do like to keep all my varieties labeled very nice. And I keep a map, up at the house too, but that each bed is labeled with the variety. Next slide. Okay. This is an experiment we did 2 years ago that worked really well. Again, I don't like to see bare soil on our farm. So you can see the garlic is now growing. This might be early April. It really, really grows fast. I mean, I tell people if you got rain and some sunny, warm days, it can grow inches a day, which is kind of fun to watch. But in between is a cover crop. So we seeded early spring. As soon as we saw that garlic, we seeded a what is it? Oats, peas, and vetch, just kind of a cover crop to grow uh, in between the garlic beds. And my thinking here was, if I don't plant something, weeds are going to grow there. So we tried this cover crop, and it worked really, really well. If you go to the next slide, we'll show you how we handled it. Okay, so this is uh, probably the second week in June, and we did nothing to that cover crop. We just kind of let it go. You can kind of see a lot of those oats and those peas are starting to flower there. And it was kind of a great companion with the garlic for the first few months, building soil, stopping erosion, adding fertility. I really kind of like this. Uh, Next slide. And after, right shortly after this picture, I just took the flail. I have a little mini flail mower and just kind of chopped it right in place. And there might have been some weeds in there too, but now you can kind of see what I'm left with. Um, my nice clean garlic beds. You can see how much it's grown since this last picture. And then kind of a nice mulch in the pathway. Um, what do I do now? This was a fun experiment. I liked it. It was more work though. Now we just spend the money and we use straw mulch and just mulch the whole field. So where that little walk behind tractor is would just be straw mulch. That does cost me more money, but I don't know. It probably a little less labor in planting the cover crop and going through and mowing it. Next slide. This is another fun experiment we tried that year. I did nothing here except trowel in some cabbage transplants, and this worked phenomenal. The cabbage had no bug pressure at all. Not as you can see, there might be a little bit of cabbage looper on there, but very little bug pressure. So I don't know if that was just because it was hiding in the garlic. But yeah, gorgeous heads, and actually, for whatever reason, matured like a week to 10 days earlier than my field cabbage. So these are just examples to show you that garlic can work with other crops. You can kind of get creative with where you plant garlic just because it grows, at the very early spring, and then it kind of comes out before the rest of the garden wants to take over. Okay, this is a fun byproduct of garlic. This is the garlic scapes. What is a garlic scape, you ask? The scape is the flowering pod of the garlic plant, and it'll grow right out of the top of the plant, and then it'll curl. And when it gets to be a full 360 like that, which tends to be middle June, we snap them off. And my mentor, in the early 2000s, would just throw these away. He said there was no market for it. Now, every little bundle like this, we get $4 for. So there's, 10 or 12 little scapes in a bundle. So it's a pretty lucrative byproduct from the garlic plant. So I like to tell people you can really eat garlic for 365 days out of the year. We like pulling it young at green garlic stage. Then we move on to the garlic scape stage. And, then we go to green uncured garlic and then garlic. But this has like a cult following now. People make garlic scape pesto. You can grill them. The Chinese prize them because there's supposedly more nutrition in the scape seed head like that than the bulb itself. So, and another beauty from a small farm, marketing standpoint, these things keep 4 to 6 months in the walk-in cooler. They just don't go bad. So for us, we have 40 or 50,000. We might have half our walk-in cooler filled of scapes, but each week at farmers market, we just keep chipping away at them. So next, please. This is just a picture of our farmers market, but you can see on the far right side of the booth, we just pile those scapes high, and people now flock for them. We start getting people asking in May, do you have scapes ready? Do you have scapes ready? So it's kind of fun to, kind of watch that market develop. Next. Okay. This is kind of what you've waited 9 months for. I tell people that garlic, like a child, takes 9 months in the ground to kind of form a head and get ready for harvest. So when I told you if I could pick one day to plant garlic, being Halloween, if I could pick one day to harvest garlic, I would say the 4th of July. If you want to follow those two holidays blindly, you would have a good crop almost no matter what. Next. So, I don't think I put it in this slide, but we have something called an undercutter. We have like a 50 horsepower John Deere, and it's a bar that goes on the back of the tractor, but it goes underneath the bed of garlic, those 3 rows, making it so people can just follow right behind that tractor and pull. You're not forking, or you're not shoveling them out. In the home garden, if your soil's loose and loamy enough, they just come right out. So don't feel like that's something that's needed to grow a crop. But we'll maybe, if those rows are 300 feet long, we'll maybe do 2 or 3 of those, undercut them, pull them, and then we throw them on this hay wagon, and then we back it into the barn to process it to the next step. Next slide. So once they're in the barn, we bundle them, at the top, kind of like that. And it's kind of a specific rubber band. It's a number 64. If you go to any like Home Depot or Office Max, that's the rubber band we found to kind of do the best job. But you can see at the top of those bundles is a rubber band, and we kind of wrap it around. And because we're tight on space, we hack the green tops off. As you can imagine, you get a humid day in July, and all that extra green in the barn can create a lot of extra humidity that I don't really want. So we've experimented with peeling them and snipping roots before, and I don't think that's a necessary step. Really, you can just pull them out of the ground, bundle them up, and why are we bundling them? There's a ton of different ways you can bundle them. You can wrap string around them. You can, I don't know, I've seen people like stick them in chicken wire. The idea is you want to promote airflow and cure the head. If you go to the next slide there, I'll kind of show you. Yeah, so this is how we cure. At the very top, you can see a 2x4, and we kind of hang fence vertically. And then we put those bundles of like 10 garlic plants, and we just kind of stick a couple heads through, and we can kind of really pack it in and go vertical in our space. But my mentor did this, and I think it's kind of an ingenious way to pack a ton of garlic in a small space. Again, you can rope them up and throw them in your garage. If you have an overhang on your front porch, you can do that. The idea is you want to keep them with constant airflow, and you want to keep the sun off of them. The garlic can get like a sunburn. It can kind of turn green. So the idea is that you want it, promote airflow, but don't have sunshine on them. Next slide. Okay. At this stage is a fun time to do garlic braids. We have a good market for garlic braids. The necks are kind of pliable, and this is something I do. I just actually do it to relax. I enjoy just sitting down and braiding garlic, and people really like them. So, there's tons of cultures that have a lot of lore behind garlic, that it keeps vampires away, or has positive vibes for the house, and I believe a lot of that. But really, it's just a way that I call it functional artwork. It's something that looks pretty in your kitchen. If you want to use these, you just clip them off from the bottom, and it's kind of a nice value added thing for your garlic crop. Some people believe that it helps keep the garlic longer, like into the winter. And that can be true, but a lot of people want to hang them in their kitchen, and kitchens sometimes can be a little hot, or if the sun's coming through, and it can kind of dehydrate garlic faster. So I found if you want to keep your garlic the longest, leave it hanging in your barn or your garage, maybe not on your front porch, but just don't mess with it. Every year, my first few years, I'd want to chop the whole crop down once it's cured and look at them all, and then put them in bags and handle them. But I just found that wasn't making my garlic store the longest. Now I just kind of let it hang, and it can handle some surprisingly cold weather, like -5 degrees, and I would worry about bringing it inside. But up until then, in a barn or a garage, it can be perfectly fine just hanging there. And this is just some we do like workshops. This is a garlic braiding workshop. I teach people how to do garlic braids. Kind of a fun thing to do. Um, and once it's fully cured, which is about 3 to 4 weeks after you harvest it, curing just means it makes it shelf stable. So you kind of dry all those papers around, and yeah, it makes it so. I mean, we're still eating hard garlic from July. So this is our website. We have a pretty strong market for selling seed garlic, and so these are kind of all the different varieties we grow. Next slide. That's kind of what it looks like. We sell, down to a half pound up to hundreds of pounds. So it's something we ship nationwide, and it's something I really enjoy, sending out nice quality garlic so other people can enjoy it. Next slide. Okay. That's kind of my contact info. How am I doing on time? Good time. Feel free to write that down. I'm an open book. I probably talked way too fast, but I am happy to, that's my cell phone. So feel free to send me a text. I'm happy to share anything I know.
Thanks, Jordan. That was great. And you're doing great on time. So we have time to take some questions, and we have some great questions in the chat and or in the Q&A. And we are going to start with, as you said, there's a huge market for the garlic braids, and there were a lot of questions about the garlic braids. So first of all, what varieties are you using to be braided? Is it hard neck varieties, soft neck varieties? What do you need for that?
Great question. Traditionally, people would only use soft necks, and we only grow one soft necked variety. The difference between soft neck and hard neck is soft neck garlic does not produce that scape. So there's no stiff, woody stem of a soft neck garlic, meaning it braids easier. I found I have like a month-long window post-harvest that I can kind of break the neck and make that neck pliable for braiding. So I braid a lot of hard necks, but if you're just starting out, I'd tell you to braid soft necks.
Okay. And then going along with that, how long do you have to cure the garlic before you braid it? And when you're hanging them there to cure, just in general, how long do you hang them to cure?
So a good rule of thumb my mentor taught me was if you have your head and then you have your neck, cut that neck about an inch or two above the top, like cut it, and then squeeze that neck. And if you get any moisture out of that, it's not cured. So like if your bulb's down here, you got that little neck, squeeze that. If any moisture comes out of it, it's not fully cured yet. So really, I tell people after about 3 weeks, it's pretty damn cured. But you can eat it at any stage. And in fact, what is it? Like from the point it's harvested to the point it's cured, garlic loses 30% of its weight. So that's 1/3 of its bulb weight that it loses in that curing process. But my favorite time to eat it is fresh out of the ground when it's just juicy like that. It just has so much more flavor, I feel like.
I would agree with that as someone who gets spring garlic from you. That's it's the best. It's
It is,
wonderful.
yeah. We treat it like
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a vegetable itself. I mean, we'll have, new potatoes are coming on. I mean, we'll put heads in our food. That's why I don't get mosquito bites.
Okay, so going along with that, someone asked if you grow soft neck garlic, which I believe you do, but I'll let you expand upon that. And just overall, what's your favorite variety of garlic?
Okay, good question. First, yes, we do soft neck variety, and I probably shouldn't admit this on the Zoom here, but my wife and I went on our honeymoon to a little farm in Italy that she worked at called Spinocchia. Um, and Spinocchia is like, I can't remember, it's from like 1200. It's been around forever, but they've grown this variety of garlic there for as long as anybody can remember, and it was a soft neck. And we went there in December. And they had just gorgeous fat heads of the Spinocchia. And so they said, "Oh, take some home and plant it." So I brought some home, in my sock, and that's kind of the variety, the only softneck I grow. We call it Spinokia softneck. It does great in our climate, which is pretty cool. We started with, I don't know, I brought home 3 heads, and now I think I have, shit, I probably planted 6,000 this year. I mean, I got quite a bit. So it's kind of fun. Garlic's one of those things that goes from, 1 head has, say, 6 cloves. The next year you'll have 6 heads, which goes to, 1 to 6 to 36. I mean, you can really scale a crop up pretty quick. But my favorite variety is, if I had to pick one, it would be Iowa German White. It is a variety my mentor gave me, Larry Cleverly, back in like 2008, that I've grown ever since. So um, he brought it from upstate New York in like 1990. So it's a cool variety.
Okay, great. Then there were some questions about the planting time. So, like, if you missed the Halloween planting, can you do anything in the spring? When is it too late to go out and plant? Someone said, given the cold, can they go throw it outside now, or, is it going to be too cold?
Well, so 2 years ago, we had a drought up until I had a big tall cover crop, and I was just waiting for it to get a little rain so I could work in that cover crop, mow it and disc it. Um, but the rain just didn't come, and the ground was like concrete, as you can imagine. So it was like the third week in October, and finally the rain came, and it didn't shut off until like the second week in November. And so I didn't even start planting 2 years ago until like late November, and I didn't finish until Christmas Day. And is that normal? No. Do I recommend it? No. But it just goes to show you that if you can work your soil and you can get a clove in the ground, garlic has a pretty damn good chance of growing. I don't recommend too much. I mean, if you could get out there in February, you'll probably get a crop. But if you plant a clove of garlic in March, the garlic will grow, but it creates something that's called a round. It's just like one mega clove. Garlic needs like 40 days of winter, or like feel like it's gone through winter to form cloves. So if you plant it in March, it'll grow, but it just won't develop cloves, if that makes sense.
That does. So people also are very interested in your regenerative farming, your cover cropping, and things like that. So can you tell us more? So we have a few kind of technical questions. Um, Someone said about the flail mower that the smallest they see is a 37 inch. So are your rows more further apart than that?
Good question. No, they're 24 inches. They're probably about 26 inches, but I, you can actually rent it. It's, where the heck is it at? And that's not a flail mower. I'm sorry, I called that a flail. I have a 7 foot flail mower behind my tractor. This is like a really aggressive brush hog mower. I don't know if I'd recommend a push mower, like you're just mowing your yard with. Something that's over a foot tall might kind of do some damage to your mower. But I actually rent that 24-inch one from a place in Adel. It's called like Raccoon Forks Rental. And that thing cannot be, I mean, it'll take down little trees. I mean, it's just made to chop down big stuff. So, yeah, but we run a BCS walk behind tractor, and they do make a BCS 24-inch flail that I wanted to buy. Because it's just kind of a nifty size. They can kind of get in unique areas and do stuff like that cover cropping.
Yeah, and then when you're doing your cover cropping, are you buying a cover crop mixture or are you mixing it on your own? How do you figure that out? What do you suggest for crop blends?
Good question. When I started out, I did buy pre-made mixes for a home gardener. You can, oh, there's a lot of websites and a lot of companies that are like doing these now, but Johnny's has pretty good. Johnny Seeds has pretty good mixes, but now I'm making my own. I love just geeking, and I like throwing 10 different species in there. And but I do it by seasonality. So it's like spring and fall we do cool season cover crops, and then in the summertime, if I'm planting something, I'll do a warm season cover crop. So early it might be oats and peas, radishes. Oh, there's tons of other things you can plant, but main season opens up a lot of the grasses, like sorghum Sudan, barley, and millets, all the buckwheats. I mean, there's tons of different stuff you can do in the summer. And then in the winter or the fall months, you can do the oats and the peas and that spring stuff. But you can also seed something. It's an overwintered cover crop called like winter rye. You can seed that pretty much any time until November, December, and it'll sprout, grow weeds, and then it'll come up. Come March, uh, it'll green up. I don't really recommend that to home gardeners because it can be kind of hard to kill. Um, so I would plant winter killed cover crops or yeah, a summer cover crop. And in the home garden, just hit it with a weed eater, lay it down, and then I don't know if people know what a broad fork is, but you can kind of broad fork it in. You can kind of turn it in with the shovel. I like doing that and then adding a layer of compost and then just planting right into that.
Great. Yeah, that's a great distinction. Because if you don't have the right equipment, you don't want to be planting cover crops that you can't get rid of, and then they just
Yes.
become a weed for you. We have also done presenta or webinars on this series about cover crops before. So if anyone is interested in that, we have one on our webinar archive on YouTube. If you look up the Iowa Master Gardener program on YouTube, and I will also share a link here in a few minutes, that Dr. Ajay Nair did about cover crops for home gardeners. And we also have a publication that's being created right now by Dr. Nair and Aaron Stile that will be available soon for home gardeners if they're having questions about very specifics about cover crops. So more information to come on that. Then one question that was asked somewhat early on, and people were interested in this. You talked about rotating the garlic to different places, different beds because of the mites. But is that something that you have to do every season? Is it just something that's recommended? Can you plant garlic in the same place from season to season? What, tell us more about that.
Um, that's kind of a loaded question. I do believe you can plant garlic year after year and probably be okay. The farmer in me would tell you that it's always kind of safe to try to rotate it, move it from one corner of the garden to the other, or at least throw another crop in there in between. So garlic comes out, maybe you throw a cover crop, maybe you throw a different family in there, but um, it's hard for me to recommend somebody to plant garlic on garlic on garlic. That's like me patting the corn farmer on the back. That's, oh, good job, you're planting corn on corn on corn. Like I do think you could build up disease. And it's not just mites. There's other soil-borne disease that can affect garlic. Garlic is kind of bomb-proof, but there are diseases that can be in the soil, and that can be kind of hard to get rid of if you have it in your soil. So it's always safe to I don't know, work in a little compost if you can't rotate, but yeah, try to rotate your crops.
And then two last questions about the cover that you're using. So at one point you were talking about your hay bales or showed your hay bales and slabs from the hay bales. How big are those?
So it's just like a standard and it was straw. There's kind of a big difference between straw and hay is kind of what animals eat, and straw is kind of what you'd use to bed on. Hay tends to be more grasses and alfalfa stuff like that. It's like a green, but there might be a lot more weed seeds in hay. Straw, oftentimes they'll harvest the grain. So we use oat straw. They'll harvest the grain, and then you're left with that uh, stock. But you can use a lot of different things for straw. I would steer you against using leaves. Can work, but if you put them on too thick and then they kind of mat down, they can kind of create like anaerobic soil underneath them. So if you do leaves, kind of make sure they're fluffy going on. But there's rye straw. There's a lot of cereal grains you can buy straw. And it would just be like a standard straw bale you see anywhere. So they might be 3, 4 feet long by 2 feet.
Okay. And then one question that I thought was particularly relevant to the weather that we're having right now is when you lay that straw cover, the straw blanket, does it ever blow away? Or how do you secure that?
That is an awesome question. And oh, in yes, 2021 maybe we got a December derecho. If anybody remembers, we had just moved to our farm. I had just had the whole field mulched. I mean, you saw how it was hundreds of straw bales. I think we had 400 or 500 straw bales. And if you can get one rain on it, you're golden. But we hadn't had a rain and we had this 90-mile-an-hour wind, and I lost all the straw. I mean, it just rolled away. So, in the backyard garden, throw it on there and just sit there and water it. Take your thumb and hose it down or put a sprinkler on it just for an hour, like water it in and you're golden. But yes, good question. That was a very expensive year because I had to remulch it, rebuy straw. I mean, it was a mess.
Yes, I think probably all of us who lived in Iowa at that time remember that derecho, and some of us are still traumatized by it.
No, it's horrible. Yeah. One more thing, and I should have mentioned that earlier. You all might be inspired to go out and plant garlic, but one thing, support your local farmer, not just me, but go to the farmer's market and buy seed. Don't buy it from a grocery store because oftentimes that's coming from China or who knows where, um, and they might treat it. So if you're buying grocery store garlic and planting it, you might say, "Hey, this isn't working." So we sell garlic, greatagardens.com, but go out to a local farmer's market and support local, somebody around your area. And that'll get you kind of your best garlic that's for our climate.
Yeah,
But thank you.
great reminder. Thank you for that, Jordan. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Stay warm. It's going to be chilly out there, and hopefully, we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.